Hello, and welcome to this presentation by the Hellenic American Union Center for Examinations and Certifications, focusing on the speaking test of the Michigan Language Assessment Examination for the Certificate of Proficiency in English. The ECP has been administered by the Hellenic American Union since 1957 and is developed by Michigan Language Assessment, which is a collaboration between the University of Michigan and Cambridge English. So, the ECP speaking test is a decision-making test for two test takers in 5 stages that last between 25 and 35 minutes. There are 2 examiners conducting the speaking test, Examiner 1 for stages 1, 2 and 3, and Examiner 2 for stages 4 and 5. Please note that both examiners assess both candidates throughout the tests. Here are the 5 stages of the ECP speaking test. In stage 1, candidates introduce themselves and answer questions providing full answers. In stage 2, candidates explain their options using their own words as much as possible while also using connectors that improve the flow of information. They then recommend one of the other candidates' options and choose one of their own before moving on to stage 3, which is consensus reaching. They compare and contrast the 2 options, expanding on the reasons why one would work better than the other. At the end of stage 3, both candidates should agree on one option to present in stage 4. So, in stage 4, candidates present the option they have chosen to the second examiner, who plays the role of someone in authority who will make the final decision. Their goal is to convince the second examiner that the option they chose is the best. Finally, in stage 5, Examiner 2 will ask both candidates challenge questions which they must answer to justify their choice. Now, what is assessed in the ECP speaking test? There are 3 criteria. First one is discourse and interaction. That is, turn-taking, passing on information and supporting your arguments, the ability to paraphrase, to initiate conversation and contribute to its development. Then there is language control and resources. That is the range of grammar and vocabulary as well as its accuracy. And finally, there is delivery and intelligibility. This does not mean accent, but rather flow. That is, as little halting or pausing as possible, and the ability to use intonation, stress, and rhythm to add to the meaning. Now, let us take a closer look at each stage. So, in the introduction, candidates introduce themselves and answer a few personal questions. They are expected to answer as naturally as possible and should not recite a whole paragraph they have learnt off by heart. Next, the second stage is explaining and recommending. At the beginning of stage 2, the examiner reads out the context of the role play. Candidates should listen carefully to that context read out to them. They are then given 2 different options each, so that is a total of 4 options, and they are not allowed to look at each other's options. They are then given 2 minutes to familiarise themselves with the prompts, and then they will present their options to each other in turns. After the first test taker has explained their information, the second test taker will be asked to recommend one of the 2 options they have just heard, without explaining why. And then, when the second test taker has explained their information, the first test taker will recommend one of the 2 options they have just heard, without explaining why. After that, candidates will be asked to choose one of the 2 options from the choices on their own paper, again without explaining why. The reason why candidates are not asked to support their recommendations and choices is that this is what they're expected to do in stage 3 of the test. Please note that candidates are allowed to take notes on a special note-taking form throughout the test. This is an example of a role-play context read out by the examiner at the beginning of stage 2. Please note that candidates cannot see this. So, how should candidates explain the information they are given in stage 2? Well, they should not just read or repeat the bulleted information without explaining. They should use their own words as much as possible, and wherever paraphrasing is not possible, they may make some comments or logical assumptions. They should stick to the information provided and should not make up or fabricate any information. They should make sure they explain and convey the information in a smooth and organized manner using appropriate connectors, without, however, overusing set linking words which would make the discourse sound mechanical and unnatural. Here is an example of the prompts given to the candidates after the examiner has read out the context of the role play. As you can see, each option has 7 bullet points, and the last one is always a negative feature. Candidates can present the points in any order they wish, and this may actually help the flow of the presentation. Here is an example of what candidates can do when paraphrasing is not possible. Indeed, how can one paraphrase 18 degrees, which is just a number basically? Instead, they can make comments and elaborate, which is also a great way to demonstrate their language skills, as opposed to just reading out the information on the sheet. Now let's move on to stage 3 of the ECP speaking test, which is consensus reaching. At the end of stage 2, candidates choose one of their 2 options, and these are the 2 options they will have to compare and contrast in stage 3, their goal being to come to an agreement at the end of stage 3 on just one of the 2 options. So, in this stage of the ECP speaking test, candidates should compare and contrast the 2 options they have chosen and discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each point. Remember, they will be assessed on their ability to pass on information, develop and support arguments, contribute to the conversation, while using a broad range of linguistic resources accurately. Which means they should definitely not just read the bullet points, but instead elaborate as much as possible. Another important thing to do is giving feedback. Candidates must show that they are aware of the other candidate and that they are indeed taking what they say into consideration so that they can comment on it and contribute to the conversation. Candidates can compare the 2 options by using the notes they took in stage 2. Please also note that the candidates are given 5 full minutes to reach consensus. They should use up all that time and avoid agreeing after a minute or 2. Remember that what matters here is not just reaching an agreement, as this is just a role play, but what actually matters is to show your ability to speak English at C2 level. The more you speak, the more you will have the opportunity to prove that you are at the right level. At the end of stage 3, they should agree on one option, and they will present that option to the second examiner in stage 4. Now, let us imagine that these are the 2 options the candidates chose at the end of stage 2, and let's have a look at how the conversation could develop. Test taker 2 says, travelling on a train for 4 hours could be a unique experience for the students, as they will have time to admire the surrounding scenery and socialise with their classmates. A 6-hour flight, on the other hand, might be exhausting and way more expensive when compared to the fare of a train trip. Don't you agree? To which test taker 1 replies, "You do have a point there. I also think that 6 hours on a plane will be quite exhausting for the students, but seeing things from a different perspective, the long trip is what makes this destination unique and exciting. Students will enjoy traveling far from home and see this long flight as part of the experience and might find ways to entertain themselves. As for the cost, I think your point is valid. Traveling by air is indeed way more expensive than taking the train." Now, what about the weather? So, in this example, test taker 1 gives feedback on what test taker 2 has just said. They add information to support their opinion and then move on, which is an effective way to complete the task. Again, note that the more candidates speak and exchange, the more they will be able to show that they are at the right level. Now, in stage 4, candidates present the option that they have chosen at the end of stage 3 to the second examiner, who plays the role of someone in authority who will make the final decision. This can be the principal of the school, as in our example today, or the owner of a shop, the director of a company, etc., etc. Please note that at the beginning of stage 4, candidates are given 3 minutes to prepare their formal presentation. They should present 2 points each based on the information on their sheet. Picking a total of 4 bullets does not take 3 minutes, so they should use all that time to actually plan their presentation. They should discuss why they believe that they should present the points they have picked and how they're going to present them. They should also decide on who is going to introduce the presentation and who is going to conclude. They should also discuss what they can say about the negative points, in case the examiner asks them about it in stage 5. So again, this part of the test is not just about picking 2 bullet points each. While presenting, candidates should use formal language. Remember, they're meant to be talking to someone important who will make the final decision, and that they are trying to convince them that the option they have chosen is the best. Here is an example of how the candidate's formal presentation can be structured. There should definitely be an introduction referring to the situation and the option chosen, which is appropriate for a formal presentation. Then, test taker 1 can present their 2 points, always justifying the points they are making to be as convincing as possible. Then, they should turn the floor over to test taker 2, at which point test taker 2 proceeds with their 2 points, and then concludes. Please note that the conclusion is often omitted by candidates, and the presentation often ends in an awkward blank, which can be avoided by signalling to the listener, the examiner, that the presentation is over and that it is now their turn to talk. During their presentation, candidates should try, in order to be as convincing as possible, to present clear points and elaborate on them by justifying and exemplifying. A strong closing statement emphasizing on how much they support the option they have chosen also helps. Then, in the final stage, that is, stage 5, the examiner asks the candidates some challenge questions based on the points they made in their formal presentation. When answering the second examiner's challenge questions, candidates should try to defend their opinion by presenting some arguments further supporting their choice. They should remember that the ECP is not a background knowledge test and that they will not be graded on their ideas or their creativity, but rather on the overall quality of language they use. To sum up, Here are some overall tips for you, whether you prepare students for the ECPE or whether you are preparing for the ECPE yourselves. For further practice, as you know, you can use the Hellenic American Union Publications practice test books, as well as our skills books to target specific parts of the ECPE test. Best of luck to you and your students in the next ECPE administration. And if you have any questions, you can always visit our website at hau.gr or contact us at exams@hau.gr. Thank you for watching, and remember to sign up for our upcoming live webinars for more information and tips on the exams administered by the Hellenic American Union. Thank you, and goodbye.